It is the second day of April. And right here on Community Radio Networks, we are going to get you all the information ready for you to take on the day. And we'll start with the world news that's coming up for you next. This is Community Radio Networks, the world news read by Shabna Madgil. Foreign nationals were among 7 aid workers killed in an Israeli military strike as they were delivering food to starving civilians in Gaza. And the World Central Kitchen has said its aid workers were traveling in a deconflicted zone in 2 armored cars branded with the charity's logo as well as a soft-skin vehicle. An Australian humanitarian aid worker is the first of 7 killed in this apparent Israeli airstrike in Gaza to have been named, with 3 British citizens among the dead. Those killed include a dual US-Canada national as well as people from Australia, Poland, the United Kingdom and a Palestinian. The Israeli military has vowed to hold an investigation into an airstrike that killed these 7 aid workers in Gaza, saying they would share our findings transparently. The Israel Defense Forces are to conduct a thorough investigation at the highest levels into the deaths of these 7 aid workers of the World Central Kitchen. And they paid tribute, noting that it had been one of the first organizations to assist Israel following the October 7th attacks mounted from the Gaza Strip. And the work of the World Central Kitchen is critical, they said. Meanwhile, an airstrike targeting Iran's embassy in Syria has killed at least 7 military officers, including a senior commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. Syrian and Iranian officials accused Israel of the attack, while an Israeli military official accused Iran of a drone strike against a military base in the southern part of Israel. Iran is known to supply weapons and funding to militant groups, including Hamas, which orchestrated last year's raid into Israel. A part of Iran's consulate in the Syrian capital has been flattened by what was described as an Israeli airstrike, a startling apparent escalation of conflict in the Middle East that would pit Israel against Iran and its allies. This attack was the first time the vast embassy compound itself has been hit and comes amid soaring tensions over Tel Aviv's war in Gaza and intensifying violence between Israel and Iran's allies. Iran's ambassador to Syria, Hossein Akbari, giving a lower death toll, told Iranian state TV that at least 5 people were killed in the attack, which was carried out by F-35 fighter jets. An Iranian flag hung from a pole in front of the debris, and the Syrian interior and foreign ministers were both spotted at the scene. Iranian state TV said among those killed was a senior commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Foreign Operations Arm, the Quds Force, Brigadier General Mohammad Reza Zahidi. The senior commander of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard has been killed in this alleged Israeli strike on the Iranian embassy in Syria's capital of Damascus. Iran will retaliate for the suspected Israeli airstrike against its consulate in the Syrian capital of Damascus, said Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, a day after the 7 Iranian military commanders were killed in the attack. Iran vowing to retaliate, and President Ibrahim Raisi condemned this deadly airstrike blamed on Israel against his country's consular annex in Damascus, saying the cowardly crime will not go unanswered. The UN Security Council to discuss the deadly strike at a meeting requested by Syrian ally Russia. And the health ministry in Gaza has said that at least 32,916 people have been killed in the territory during more than 5 months of Israeli offensive against Hamas. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to shut down Al Jazeera's operations in Israel, calling it a terror channel that spreads incitement after Parliament passed a law clearing the way for its closure. Scottish First Minister Hamza Yusuf has assailed the UK for continuing to send arms to Israel, terming it shameful and unacceptable. And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken holding talks with French President Macron in Paris today on supporting Ukraine in its fighting with Russia and Israel Hamas. The White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan plans to travel to Saudi Arabia this week for talks with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman amid a US push for progress progress towards normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The Biden administration is close to approving the sale of as many as 50 American-made F-15 fighter jets to Israel in a deal expected to be worth more than $18 billion. Reporting discrimination and attacks against Muslims and Palestinians has reached a record high in the United States last year, driven by rising Islamophobia and bias as the Israel-Gaza conflict raged late in the year. And these U.S. anti-Muslim incidents have hit a record high due to the conflicts. The U.S. Coast Guard has opened a temporary alternate channel for vessels involved in clearing debris from the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, part of a phased approach to opening the main shipping channel leading to the vital port. Crews are undertaking the complicated work of removing steel and concrete at the site of the bridge's deadly collapse after this container ship lost power and crashed into the supporting column. And officials said the temporary channel that has been opened is primarily to vessels that are helping with the cleanup effort, and some barges and tugs that have been stuck in the port of Baltimore since the collapse are also scheduled to pass through this channel. Voters in 4 states will weigh in today on their party's presidential nominees, a large symbolic vote now that both President Biden and former President Trump have locked up the Democratic and the Republican nominations. Biden and Trump are both expected to easily win primaries in Connecticut, New York, Rhode Island, and Wisconsin, and add to their delegate hauls for their party conventions this summer. Wisconsin, known for its political volatility, once again finds itself at the heart of American presidential politics, with a rematch between Donald Trump and Joe Biden appearing to be a key determinant of the 2024 election outcome. The former President Trump posted a $175 million bond in his New York civil fraud case last night, staving off the possible seizure of his assets while appealing a state judge's ruling against him over deceitful business practices. The bond from the Knight Specialty Insurance Company automatically bars New York Attorney General Letitia James from collecting the $464 million plus interest judgment against Trump, his business, and top executives, while the appellate process moves forward. Former President Trump posting that $175 million bond in the New York civil fraud case, preventing seizure of his assets while the case is under appeal. And the judge presiding over the impending New York criminal trial has expanded a partial gag order last night following the former president's online attacks against his daughter. State Judge Juan Merchant said Trump is barred from attacking his family members and those of Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg, in addition to the witnesses, prosecutors, court staff members, and their relatives whom he was directed to refrain from talking about in a previous gag order issued last week. And the judge overseeing the federal tax case against Hunter Biden denied a series of motions by the president's son to dismiss the tax charges against him. The Florida Supreme Court has cleared the way for the state to ban abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy before many women know they are pregnant, while also giving voters a chance to remove restrictions in November. Thunder and lightning delayed the start of the annual Easter egg roll at the White House yesterday, but the event eventually rolled ahead under gray skies with a large crowd, including many youngsters wearing ponchos or colorful jackets against intermittent rain. More than 40,000 people, 10,000 more than last year, attending, and as they had the activities out there in this year's theme, Egg-ucation, led by Dr. Jill Biden, who has been a teacher for more than 30 years. As these powerful storms across the country threaten parts of central and eastern United States with severe weather, bringing widespread risk of tornadoes, large hail, and strong winds. And the storm system moved through Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Illinois. More than 9 million people were placed under severe thunderstorm watch. And hundreds of people were evacuated after a landslide caused portions of California's Highway 1 to collapse, though parts of the road remained closed. A Plano house fire may have caused by last night's lightning, but investigators have not yet confirmed it. It was at 8 o'clock last night, as severe weather was passing through North Texas, that flames erupted from a house on Crystal Falls Drive in the Kings Ridge development in the city of Plano. A person in Texas became ill with bird flu after contact with infected dairy cattle. It's the first human case of the highly pathogenic strain of avian influenza in Texas, and it's the second recorded in the United States. And the South Texas town of Uvalde will have to hold another special election after Mayor Cody Smith resigned effective immediately due to medical concerns. A new mayor will be elected in November. And an attorney for Kansas City Chiefs player Rashee Rice said that the wide receiver is cooperating with authorities after a speeding Corvette and a Lamborghini sport utility vehicle caused a chain reaction crash on a busy Dallas highway over the weekend. Texas Governor Greg Abbott today issued a proclamation recognizing this month as Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month in Texas. And a judge in El Paso County has ordered the release of some migrants charged with rushing that border last month. Hundreds of people rushed towards the border using cardboard and clothing to cover the razor wire and rushed past members of the Texas National Guard hoping to turn themselves into the U.S. Border Patrol to seek asylum. Indiana Governor Eric Holcomb is sending 50 troops from their state National Guard to El Paso this month in an effort to assist the Texas National Guard and the Texas DPS in Governor Greg Abbott's efforts to expand his border strategy. The terrorist group that the U.S. blames for a ruthless massacre at a Moscow rock concert has steadily increased its ranks, capabilities, financial network, and global recruitment from a safe haven in Afghanistan, where the Taliban government has been unable and at times unwilling to stop it, according to former senior American, Afghan, and European intelligence officials. Tajikistani national Yusuf Zoda Yakubjoni has been arrested in connection with the Crocus City music venue terrorist attack near Moscow, and the court there announced his arrest, extending his custody until the 22nd of May. He allegedly transferred money to one of the suspects before the attack to provide accommodation for the terrorist, and is accused of transferring funds to one of the attackers also after the massacre. A Ukrainian drone struck Russia's third largest oil refinery this morning, about 1,300 kilometers from the front lines, hitting a unit that processes about 155,000 barrels of crude per day, though an industry source said the damage was not significant. Ministers and officials from dozens of countries gathering in the Netherlands today for a conference on restoring justice in Ukraine as the war sparked by Russia's invasion drags on in its third devastating year. Among speakers will be the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, which has issued arrest warrants for Russian President Putin and military officers linked to the war. Pressure mounted against Peruvian President Dina Boluarte as lawmakers submitted to Parliament a request to remove her from office for permanent moral incapacity 3 days after police broke down the front door for residents to search for luxury watches tied to an investigation. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi of Egypt sworn in for a third 6-year term this morning after being re-elected in a December vote in which he faced no serious challengers. Al-Sisi took the oath of office before Parliament, which convened in the new administrative capital in the desert outside Cairo. He won 89.6% of the votes in the December election with a turnout of 66.8%, more than 67 million registered voters, and ran against 3 virtually unknown opponents. Dozens of migrants found in a wooden boat in the Mediterranean Sea between North Africa and southern Europe have been transported to the Greek island of Crete. Crete has recently seen a rise in migrant arrivals from Libya, which Greece's government promised to address with more funding and extra Coast Guard personnel. The boat with 74 people on board was found late Sunday, 25 nautical miles south of the small Greek island of Gavdos. And a 12-year-old has opened fire this morning at a school outside the Finnish capital of Helsinki, injuring 3 other people, and the attacker is in custody. The school in Vantaa has around 800 students and 90 staff. Children in grades 1 to 9 or age 7 to 15 attend that school. Spain will recognize Palestinian statehood by July, said Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to reporters during a Middle East tour. And marijuana campaigners in Germany lit celebratory joints as the country legalized the possession of small amounts of cannabis for recreational use, over objections from doctors and police. In this news out of Frankfurt. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the World News on Community Radio Networks. North Korea has fired a ballistic missile, according to the South Korean military this morning, launching what appeared to be an intermediate-range ballistic missile from the Pyongyang area at 6:53 a.m. towards the East Sea, also known as the Sea of Japan. And more than 800 people suspected of being cross-border scammers have been arrested in a joint police operation by Myanmar and China, according to Beijing's embassy in Yangon. Scam compounds have flourished in Myanmar, staffed by citizens from China and other countries who are often forced to work swindling their compatriots in an industry analysts say is worth billions. Taiwan's former president Ma Ying-jeou has headed to China for what he called a journey of peace aimed at cooling cross-strait tensions. Speaking to reporters at the airport before his departure, he described his trip to China as a journey of peace and a journey of friendship. Last year, he made the first visit to China by a current or former Taiwanese leader in more than 7 decades in a bid to improve the cross-strait atmosphere. Last week, China's Coast Guard shot a water cannon at a Philippine boat on a supply mission to an outpost on the second Thomas Shoal, injuring crew members and damaging the small vessel. Large Chinese vessels frequently harass Filipino boats near the shoal, which has become a flashpoint in a long-running maritime dispute in the South China Sea between Beijing and Manila. The England Cricket Board said in a statement this morning that all-rounder Ben Stokes has chosen not to be selected for this year's 2020 World Cup, and that in order to concentrate on getting fitter for the summer's test matches. The reigning T20 World Cup champions are England, who won their second championship in Australia in 2022. Asita Fernando claimed 4 for 34 as Sri Lanka bowled out Bangladesh for 178 to take a massive 353-run lead in the first innings of the second test in Chittagong last night. And inconsistent Royal challengers Bengaluru would be eager to hit the turnaround button when they host Lucknow Super Giants, who will keep an eye on regular skipper KL Rahul's fitness at the IPL today. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar today expressed confidence that India will secure permanent membership in the United Nations Security Council, acknowledged a growing global sentiment favoring India's inclusion, but emphasized the need for intensified efforts to achieve this goal. The Supreme Court said that the politician can continue with his political activities after coming out of jail, and we are talking about Aam Aadmi Party leader Sanjay Singh. Earlier today, the Aam Aadmi Party MLAs, including Saurabh Bhardwaj and Kailash Gehlot, arrived at Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal's residence to meet with his wife Sunita and asserted that the Chief Minister should not resign. Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal was brought to the Tihar jail yesterday. He has been sent to judicial custody till the 15th of April in the Delhi liquor policy case. The Enforcement Directorate presented Arvind Kejriwal before court today and had sought a 15-day judicial custody in the excise policy case. In a show of unity, the India bloc leaders came together at the Loktantra Bachao rally and attacked the NDA government for being dictatorial and misusing the other central agencies to rig the Lok Sabha polls by getting its opponents jailed and bank accounts of parties sealed. And now Arvind Kejriwal is the 4th Aam Aadmi Party lawmaker who is currently lodged in the Tihar jail, moved to ward number 4 in Tihar's jail number 2 last night after a Delhi court remanded him to judicial custody till the 15th of this month. The second meeting of the BJP's newly formed Election Manifesto Committee is likely to be held on the 4th of this month. And Prime Minister Modi today attacked Congress and said the grand old party wants to push the country towards anarchy and instability. And Congress has started instigating people against electoral verdicts as the party with emergency mindset does not have faith in democracy anymore, said the Prime Minister at a poll rally in Uttarakhand. He was reacting to Rahul Gandhi's remarks at the India Bloc rally, where the former Congress president had accused the BJP of match-fixing and had said if the BJP wins these match-fixed elections and changes the constitution, the whole country will be on fire. Prime Minister Modi slammed the Congress party for their dynasty politics, saying Congress considers their family bigger than the nation. Prime Minister Modi, during a tour to Telangana in the run-up to the Lok Sabha elections, recently inevitably drew strong strong rebuttal when he denounced the Parivarvad as a peril to democracy. The remarks were not new, but it gained fresh perspective as political parties unveiled their choice of candidates for this month's elections. The Indian Air Force conducted the first test run of the 3.5-kilometer long emergency landing strip with 5 helicopters on the Jammu-Srinagar National Highway and around Anantnag, and that happened at midnight. Pakistan Cricket Board Chairman Mohsin Naqvi met the national cricket team, which is currently participating in a fitness camp in Kakul, amid a controversy over comments attributed to Shaheen Shah Afridi in an official statement. Elections on 19 vacant Senate seats in the National Assembly and the provincial legislatures of Punjab and Sindh have concluded, and counting of votes is currently underway. National Assembly Speaker Ayaz Sadiq declared senior PTI leader Umar Ayub Khan as the leader of the opposition in the lower house of parliament. And PMLN Supremo leader Nawaz Sharif continues to chair administrative meetings alongside his daughter, Chief Minister Maryam Nawaz, despite criticism. He co-chaired a meeting to review issues faced by the province's agriculture sector. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the world news for you, but I do have plenty of financial news, and that's coming up for you. Just give me a minute for that. Stay with us right here on Community Radio Networks. And we bring to you all this information every morning, getting you ready to take on the day. Let's get you now the financial news, and we always start that with the foreign currency exchange rates. We have the Indian rupee at 83.37, Pakistani rupee at 277.83, Bangladeshi taka at 109.76, Sri Lankan rupee 299.38, Nepalese rupee 133.46, the British pound at 0.80, the euro at 0.93, the Canadian dollar 1.36, the Australian dollar 1.54, Mexican peso 16.61, Chinese yuan 7.24, Japanese yen 151.65, the Russian ruble at 91.68, the Thai baht at 36.63, and the Turkish lira at 32.05. U.S. stocks poised for losses today, signaling another day in the doldrums as healthcare insurers tumbled and investors faced up the chances an interest rate cut will come later than hoped. Futures in the Dow Jones Industrial Average have slipped 0.4% or 160 points, setting the blue chip index back from a bid to reach the key 40,000 level. S&P 500 futures shed 0.3%, while contracts on the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 fell 0.4%. U.S. bonds continue to struggle as the yield on the benchmark 10-year Treasury rose to around 4.36%, hovering near its highest levels for this year. The Federal Reserve's inflation story is all about housing. Right now, the gap between the Fed's preferred inflation measure and the most popular inflation measure is a full percentage point, and how these two series account for the cost of shelter yields a 1.5 percentage point gap between them, a difference that's offset by other components to its current gap at the bottom of the ledger. The U.S. labor market has remained resilient since the start of the year, but there are signs of some cracks forming underneath the surface. The unemployment rate has been picking up in states across the country, or more accurately on the either side of the country. In California, for instance, the state unemployment rate hit 5.3% in February, up 0.8% from a year ago and the highest in the nation. New Jersey's unemployment rate hit 4.8% in February, also up 0.8%, and this is the national unemployment rate ticking up to 3.9% in March. U.S. crude futures pierced $85 for the first time since October, the latest milestone in a market that has rallied against a backdrop of OPEC cuts, strong demand, and heightened geopolitical risk. West Texas Intermediate added as much as 1.8% in New York, while the global Brent benchmark neared $89 a barrel. Oil has risen on the prospect of tightening crude supplies in the Americas, while an Israeli attack in Syria that you just heard about in the world's news has threatened to widen the conflict in the Middle East. Gold paired gains after hitting an all-time high as traders rethink the Federal Reserve's rate-cutting path following solid U.S. factory data. The bullion has jumped to $2,265.73 an ounce yesterday, up 1.6% from Thursday's close. Less than a week after a flashy stock market debut, Donald Trump's social media company disclosed that it lost nearly $58.2 million last year, sending its stock tumbling more than 21%. Trump Media and Technology Group, the parent company of Donald Trump's social media platform Truth Social, sank more than 21% yesterday following a blockbuster debut last week. And at yesterday's closing price of $48.66, Trump Media had a market cap of $6.65 billion, giving the former president a stake worth $3.8 billion after the company's debut last week. His stake was worth just over $4.5 billion. A billionaire Donald Trump supporter, whose California company is known for subprime auto loans, has offered to arrange the former president's $175 million appeal bond in New York State's civil fraud suit, though he said politics had nothing to do with it, and that bond has posted. His name is Don Hankey, whose fortune stems from car dealerships, real estate investments, and financial services, and he's chairman of Knight Specialty Insurance Company, which posted the bond yesterday, 3 days before a court-imposed deadline, and the bond gives Trump a lifeline by putting a $454 million judgment on hold while he appeals. A digital tool considered vital in tracking viral falsehoods, CrowdTangle, will be decommissioned by Facebook owner Meta in a major election year, a move researchers fear will disrupt efforts to detect an expected fire hose of political misinformation. Health insurance stocks have fallen sharply in pre-market avoid trading today after U.S. regulators didn't boost payments for private Medicare plans like the industry had come to expect. Humana shares fell sharply in early trading this morning, while rivals United Health and CVS Health traded firmly in the red as the health insurance industry received yet another blow to its profit forecasts for this year. Oilfield services company SLB said today it'll buy Champion X in an all-stock deal valued at $7.75 billion. Champion X shareholders will receive 0.735 shares of SLB common stock, and the deal is expected to close before the end of this year. General Electric today completed its breakup into 3 companies, marking the end of an era for the industrial conglomerate pioneer that was once a symbol of American business power. The industrial giant's aerospace and energy businesses will begin trading on the New York Stock Exchange as separate entities today, more than a year after its healthcare business began trading on the NASDAQ. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman no longer owns or controls a venture capital fund associated with the company, according to new disclosures with the SEC. Control has been moved over to Ian Hathaway, who's helped manage the fund since it launched in 2021. Microsoft has introduced new versions of Microsoft 365 and Office 365 subscription service that excludes its business collaboration chat offering Teams, following scrutiny from the European Union regulator and complaints from rival Slack. The move, which some analysts say is unlikely to change the commercial growth trajectory, follows Microsoft agreeing to sell Office 365 suites, sans Microsoft Teams, offering in the EU and Switzerland last year. Google agreed to destroy or de-identify billions of records of web browsing data collected when users were in its private browsing incognito mode, according to this proposed class action settlement that was filed yesterday. In Brown versus Google, it'll also mandate greater disclosure from the company about how it collects information in incognito mode and puts limits on future data collection. AT&T has announced it would investigate a data breach that involved the personal information of more than 70 million current and former customers leaked on the dark web. And UPS announced it will become the primary air cargo provider for the United States Postal Service following unsuccessful negotiations between FedEx and USPS. The USPS, which doesn't own or operate any aircrafts, has had a relationship with FedEx since 2001 for U.S. mail, priority mail, and priority express mail air transportation. Yesterday, Amazon added $2.75 billion to its investment in Anthropic, bringing its total investment in the artificial intelligence startup to $4 billion. And this news marks the biggest investment Amazon has made in another company since its founding and represents its latest effort to compete with Microsoft and Google on AI. The Federal Trade Commission is investigating TikTok over its data and security practices, a probe that could lead to a settlement or a lawsuit against the company. And Fisker Inc. is continuing a trying month as it claws at the hole it has found itself in, staring down the barrel of potential bankruptcy with a potential shuttering of its doors looming. The American EV automaker is now pulling every lever to maximize revenues, including unprecedented discounts on its loan model, the Fisker Ocean. Fisker currently operates as the second iteration of an EV automaker by the same name, led by founder and CEO Henrik Fisker, who unfortunately has already been through this challenging situation before. A difficult economic outlook has forced several Texas universities to increase tuition for the 2024-25 academic year. At Baylor University, tuition will increase by 6%, at TCU by 7.9%, and at the University of Houston system, it is allowing tuition increases of up to 5%. The recall of red yeast products linked to at least 5 deaths in Japan may have Americans questioning the safety of a range of dietary supplements containing the ingredient and readily found online and in stores. Billed as a natural means of lowering cholesterol, the products recalled by Kobayashi Pharmaceutical Company contained Benicoji, an ingredient derived from a species of mold. A United Airlines flight from Frankfurt, Germany to San Francisco was diverted after a toilet overflowed into the cabin. And the shares of Calvin Klein owner PVH Corporation have slumped nearly 23% before the bell this morning after it forecast worse than feared annual revenue and profit, mainly hit by challenging demand in Europe. The apparel maker, which also owns Tommy Hilfiger, forecast its fiscal 2024 revenue to fall between 6 and 7%, steeper than the 2.3% drop estimated by analysts. PVH's wholesale revenue has declined 10% in the fourth quarter as wholesale customers across North America and Europe continue to take a cautious approach. Retailers such as PVH, Levi Strauss, and Ralph Lauren have struggled with weaker wholesale business in North America due to department stores and retailers cutting back on orders owing to slow consumer demand. Athletic apparel manufacturer Adidas and the German Football Federation have blocked the sale of Germany national team jerseys with the number 44 in response to criticism of the design, which is reminiscent of a Nazi symbol. And so they are blocking the personalization of the jerseys. It wasn't possible to personalize the jerseys with one's own name and number anymore in the Adidas online shop. And meanwhile, stopped the delivery of jerseys with the number 44 already ordered in its own online shop. Social media users noticed that the number 44 in the new design presented last month looks like the logo of the Schutzstaffel, a major paramilitary organization under Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Renault will start engineering work on a more affordable version of its electric Twingo model this month, according to sources with the production targeted in 2 years, as it seeks to stave off intense competition from Chinese rivals. In this news out of Paris. Russia is looking to crack down on migrants after the terrorist attack at a Moscow concert hall, but those measures could end up harming its economy because there's already a shortage of available workers. Russia has up to 5 million migrant workers currently in the country. Fitch Ratings has stripped Panama of its investment-grade credit rating as the closure of a key copper mine last year added to the country's fiscal worries and risks undermining growth prospects. We do have South Korean scientists who have set a new world record using the Korea superconducting tokamak advanced research device, an artificial sun nuclear fusion reactor, in what they say is a major step forward for the tech. The team was able to generate plasma temperatures of 100 million degrees Celsius, 7 times as hot as the sun's core, for 48 seconds, indicating we're finding new ways to confine the stuff and potentially turn it into a viable source of power for longer periods. China has dethroned the U.S. to become the top alignment choice for Southeast Asians as Washington loses ground on a range of key issues from regional economic engagement to the Israel-Hamas war. And we do have Chinese garlic in India. Authorities there on high alert after a significant amount of smuggled Chinese garlic was discovered in the country. Customs officials have increased surveillance at land customs posts, deploying sniffer dogs and informing local intelligence to prevent smuggling through neighboring countries like Nepal and Bangladesh. Blackstone is exploring raising $300 million via an Indian IPO of the International Gemological Institute, its gemstone certification firm, for which it expects a $1.5 billion valuation. Blackstone acquired IGI for $570 million in May of last year from Chinese conglomerate Fosun and the business's founding Lori family. IGI has most of its business in India and describes itself as the world's largest independent lab for testing and grading diamonds and other gemstone and jewelry. BMW Group and Tata Technologies will form a joint venture to develop automotive software for the German luxury car maker. According to an Indian engineering service company, India is a software development hub for global automakers and auto parts makers, including Volvo and Magna International, while also witnessing rising investments for companies including Toyota Motor and Mercedes-Benz to boost the production. Italian supercar maker Lamborghini has been enjoying consistent growth in the Indian market, and last year the brand hit an all-time high sales figure of 100-plus cars in India. While India is still a small market compared to the US or China for the Italian brand, there's a strong long-term potential that the brand sees here. And in order to better understand the plans of Lamborghini for the Indian market, budget carrier Indigo aiming to increase its international presence, has announced direct flights between Kannur and Abu Dhabi. Commencing on the 9th of May, the airline looks to enhance the international connectivity by operating daily non-stop flights from Kannur to the UAE capital. The Director General of Civil Aviation asked Vistra to submit daily information and details on the flights that are being cancelled and delayed. Vistra, the joint venture airline between Tata and SIA, faced significant disruptions with nearly 50 flights cancelled and substantial delays in over 150 flights across its network. The airline has announced plans to reduce flight operations and deploy wide-body aircrafts on domestic routes to manage the backlog of affected passengers. Aditya Birla Fashion and Retail saw a 10% increase in shares this morning and hitting the upper circuit. The surge followed the company's announcement of considering the vertical demerger of Madura Fashion and Lifestyle business from ABFRL into a separate listed company. The shares of Life Insurance Corporation of India have bounced back impressively after recent declines, rising 6% in the first session of financial year 25. Yoga Guru Ramdev today appeared before the Supreme Court and tendered an unconditional apology for violating orders related to misleading advertisements of Patanjali's medicinal products. The apex court has criticized Ramdev and Patanjali Ayurved's managing director for their absolute defiance, not submitting proper compliance affidavits. And Byju's reportedly saw another round of job cuts recently. The company laid off employees over phone calls last month. IT services giant Infosys is implementing in-person collab weeks for employees involved in engineering, Internet of Things projects, and these designated weeks require employees to be present at their respective campuses. The price of gold has seen remarkable gains this year, with the yellow metal becoming costlier by over 5,000 rupees per 10 grams so far. But with the surge, the question arises, should you really buy gold? Japanese companies operating in Pakistan are least interested in further investment to expand their businesses, while the country ranked lowest in the region. Amid rising smuggling of Iranian oil products and claims of eroding market share of oil marketing companies, local oil sales rose 4% year-on-year last month and 3% month-on-month. And this news out of Karachi. As part of reforms urged by the International Monetary Fund, the Privatization Commission has said that it was putting on the block a stake ranging from 51% to 100% of Pakistan International Airlines. The disposal of the flag carrier is a step past elected governments have steered away from, likely to be highly unpopular, but progress on the privatization will help pursue further funding talks with the IMF. The World Bank said today it expected economic activity in Pakistan to remain subdued, adding that the GDP was expected to grow at 1.8% in the current fiscal year. Pakistan's merchandise export growth last month has slowed, and expressing a need to restore confidence in the official functionaries, the Federation of Pakistan Chambers of Commerce and Industry has asked the government to speed up taxation reforms and privatize loss-making state-owned enterprises. Ahead of Eid, the newly elected government hiked the price of petrol as well as diesel for the next fortnight. After a considerable delay of 8 months, the cash-strapped Pakistan Hockey Federation finally issued the first installment of the arrears of senior and junior players as well as staff members. In this news out of Lahore. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have in the financial news for you. I do have the final segment of the program coming up for you next. Just give me a moment on that. This, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the final segment of our program today. And today is Tuesday, the 2nd of April, and we're tracking a cold front that is crossing the Red River Valley, bringing wind and cooler temperatures here through North Texas. A deck of mid-level stratus clouds also along and behind it. So we'll see an increase in cloud cover today as temperatures are going to drop into the mid to upper 50s and pretty much hold steady all day long. No rain is on with this front. The skies will clear overnight with temperatures falling into the 40s and the north winds continuing. But tomorrow looks fantastic. Breezy and cool temperatures continuing with afternoon highs in the low 70s, right at the average for this time of the year. And that'll be tomorrow. And that is on today, of course, the 2nd of April. I would like to get you some stories from the annals of history that happened on the 2nd of April. It was Hans Christian Andersen, one of the world's greatest storytellers, who was born near Copenhagen on today's date in 1805. His father died during his boyhood, and he went to work in a factory briefly. He showed great talent for languages and entered the University of Copenhagen, published his literary spoof called A Journey on Foot from Holman's Canal to the East Point of Amager, which became his first important work. He wrote several plays that flopped, but he achieved some success with his novel called The Improvisator. Meanwhile, he entertained himself by writing a series of children's stories that he published as collections. And the first of those, fairy tales told for children, included The Princess and the Pea. He released new collections every year or two for decades as he traveled widely in Europe, Africa, and Asia Minor. And his stories include The Ugly Duckling, The Little Mermaid, and The Emperor's New Clothes. He died in 1875 at the age of 70. Born on today's date in 1805, Hans Christian Andersen, and every child has read his books. President Wilson asked for a declaration of war on today's date in the year 1917 during World War I. In his address to Congress that day, he lamented it is a fearful thing to lead this great peaceful people into war. 4 days later, Congress obliged and declared war on Germany. Germany, embroiled in the war with Britain, France, and Russia, increased its attacks on neutral shipping in the Atlantic and offered in the form of the so-called Zimmerman telegram to help Mexico regain Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona if it would join Germany in a war against the United States. And this public outcry against Germany buoyed President Wilson in asking Congress to abandon America's neutrality to make the world safe for democracy. Went on to lead what was at the time the largest war mobilization effort in the country's history. At first, he only asked for volunteer soldiers, but soon realized voluntary enlistment would not raise a sufficient number of troops and signed the Selective Service Act, which required men between 21 and 35 years of age to register for that draft, increasing the size of the army from 200,000 troops to 4 million by the end of the year. One of the infantrymen who volunteered for active duty was future President Harry Truman. And that is President Wilson asking for a declaration of war on today's date in 1917. His most enduring wartime policy, though, remains his plan for a League of Nations, which, though unsuccessful, laid the foundation for the present United Nations. And the world's first anthrax outbreak begins in Russia on today's date in 1979. By the time it ends 6 weeks later, 66 people had died and 30 more had survived serious illness. And that town suffered livestock losses from this epidemic. They first began reporting their illnesses. The government announced that the cause was tainted meat that the victims had eaten. Since the town was known in intelligence circles for its biological weapons plant, much of the rest of the world was immediately skeptical of the Soviet explanation. And not until 13 years later that the epidemic was finally explained. Workers at the weapons plant failed to replace a crucial filter, causing a release of anthrax spores into the outside air. And the wind carried the spores to a farming area and infected people and livestock in that area. Had the town been downwind from the plant at the time of the release, the death toll might have been considerably higher. Anthrax, ladies and gentlemen, is a bacterium that can enter the body through multiple routes, or most deadly when it is inhaled, and prompts the production of toxic molecules that destroy essential proteins in the body's cells, usually in the lymph nodes. And that deadly anthrax poison was released from Soviet bioweapons plant on today's date in the year 1979. And in 1982, on the 2nd of April, Argentina invades the Falkland Islands, a British colony since 1892 and in British possession since 1833. Argentine amphibious forces rapidly overcame the small garrison of British Marines and the next day seized the dependent territories of South Georgia and the South Sandwich Group. 1,800 Falkland Islanders, mostly English-speaking sheep farmers, awaited a British response. The Falkland Islands, located 300 miles off the southern tip of Argentina, had long been claimed by the British. John Davis, the British navigator, may have sighted the islands, and British Navy Captain John Strong made the first recorded landing on the islands in 1690 and named them after Viscount Falkland, who was the first Lord of the Admiralty at the time. Argentina declared its independence from Spain and proclaimed its sovereignty over the Falklands in 1816 and built a fort on the East Falkland, but it was destroyed by the USS Lexington in retaliation for the seizure of US SEAL ships in the area. And for the next 90 years, life on the Falklands remained much unchanged. But in 1982, on today's date, Argentine salvage workers occupied the South Georgia island, and a full-scale invasion of the Falklands began under orders from their commanders. The Argentina troops inflicted no British casualties despite suffering losses to their own units. Nevertheless, Britain was outraged, and Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher assembled a naval task force of 30 warships to retake the islands. As Britain is 8,000 miles from the Falklands, it took several weeks for the British warships to arrive. And it was after several weeks of fighting that the large Argentine garrison at Stanley surrendered, and Britain lost 5 ships and 256 lives in this fight to regain the Falklands, and Argentina lost its only cruiser and 750 lives. Humiliated in the Falklands War, the Argentine military was swept from power in 1983, and civilian rule was restored. In Britain, Margaret Thatcher's popularity soared after the conflict, and her Conservative Party won a landslide victory in 1983, according to parliamentary elections. But Argentina invaded Falklands on the 2nd of April in 1982. And in 2005, on the 2nd of April, John Paul II, history's most well-traveled pope and the first non-Italian to hold the position since the 16th century, dies at his home in the Vatican. 6 days later, 2 million people packed the Vatican City for his funeral, said to be one of the biggest in history. And that was John Paul II, remembered for his successful efforts to end communism, as well as for building bridges with peoples of other faiths and issuing the Catholic Church's first apology for its actions during World War II. He was succeeded by Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI. Pope Francis, who succeeded Pope Benedict, canonized John Paul II in April 2014. But Pope John Paul II died on today's date in the year 2005. These were some of the stories from the annals of history that happened on today's date. And for bringing you all this information on community radio networks, I would like to thank our supporters. Huge thanks going out to Discount Power. You can check out more details about their prices in commercial as well as residential electricity at discountpowertx.com. Houston EB5, Mr. Pradeep Kumar there can help you, and that is HoustonEB5.com. The Ahluwalia Law Offices, where Attorney Pallavi Ahluwalia can help you with all your immigration and family law cases. And the Wyndham Hotel in Irving, which has the most beautiful banquet halls also for your next event. Digital X-Force by Lalit Ahluwalia, that is based in South Lake, and Attorney Kimberly Kinzer at Kinzer Law Also, the My Kolachi restaurant as well as the Ruchi Palace. Shri Vimal in Irving, Vimal's venue for your next event, as well as Eggholic on MacArthur Boulevard in Irving. Huge thanks going out to Mystic Mandala and Flash Brush Productions. This Saturday, the 6th of April, Thrive Kids Foundation is bringing to you Autism Spectrum Frontiers, Advancing Knowledge in the Diagnosis, Treatment, and Prevention of Autism. This is happening at the Collin College Conference Center on Wade Boulevard in Frisco. There will be a healthcare professional conference from 8 to 1, and then a panel discussion for the community from 2 to 4. The Success Door, supporting the Pledge Campaign Foundation, is presenting Fly, First Love Yourself, Showcase Season 4, also happening on Saturday, the 6th of April, at the Dew Event Center in Louisville from 4 to 8. On Sunday, this coming Sunday, the 7th, TIPS, the Texas Indo-American Physician Society, bringing to you their 5K and 10K run or walk, whatever you prefer, at the Oak Point Preserve on Spring Creek Parkway in Plano. And online registration is required at runsignup.com. TIPS Northeast Chapter inaugurating a mentorship program to help students of Indian and South Asian origin for medical students in the North Texas region and graduates of Indian medical schools who are looking for residency positions, fellowships, clinical and research observerships, as well as jobs. Y'all can send an email to mentorship@tipsnec.org. Color Me Safe Foundation is a family crisis management organization serving the greater Dallas area, and the foundation's mission is to empower families regardless of background or economic means by providing guidance, solutions, and education related to child welfare. They've launched 2 new educational initiatives. One is called Ask Auntie, and the other is Sathi Support Group. Through discussion on topics such as generational and cultural gaps, cultural identity, mental health, bullying, and many more. These programs seek to empower South Asian children and families with the tools and understanding to overcome these shared challenges in a very supportive and non-judgmental space. And so for more information, you can contact colormesafefoundation.org. 8th of April is when we are having the solar eclipse, one of the biggest celestial events taking place this month. Stargazers will get this opportunity to witness this in the daytime. It'll be a total solar eclipse, which is creating an amazing diamond ring, and this would be visible for 4 minutes. And this rare phenomenon will begin when the position of the moon comes in between the Earth and the sun and will cast a shadow that transforms the day into twilight. Going to be a very rare celestial event, and the starting phase of this cosmic event will witness the sun taking a crescent shape, and the partial eclipse will last between 70 to 80 minutes. But the diamond ring will appear for 4 minutes and 28 seconds, and the dazzling burst of light that clings to one edge of the moon as the soft glow of the corona emerges from the background sky and the silhouettes that opposite edge. A striking resemblance to a diamond engagement ring, unmistakable. And after totality, the effect is briefly visible after that again. So the total solar eclipse taking place on the 8th of this month. And then, ladies and gentlemen, it is local graduate and undergraduate students that are competing in the U.S.-India Chamber of Commerce Foundation Spirit of Innovation competition for business plan presentations. It's happening on Friday, the 12th of April at the Brookhaven College from 9 to 1. And on the 13th of April from 3 to 8, Vibha's 18th Annual Kite Flying Festival at the Sound at Cypress Waters on Olympus Boulevard in Coppell. They're also going to have a program there called Talent for a Reason, calling anyone who wants to dance, sing, do stand-up comedy, show a unique skill, or do martial arts. Any talent is welcome. So please join them on the community stage there. 3 to 8, the Sound Amphitheater in Coppell for Vibha's 18th Kite Flying Festival. Music That Feeds, a Hunger Mitao initiative, an evening of melody with a difference, happening on the 14th of April from 4 to 7 at UTD's Johnson Performance Hall. And you can celebrate Diversity Night. April is Celebrate Diversity Month. So please join the Dallas Symphony Orchestra for a special pre-concert event celebrating the importance of diversity, inclusion, equity, and unity, featuring many of the community partners and friends who value inclusion and recognize the power of an organizational culture that respects, honors, and embraces people of diverse backgrounds, perspectives, and abilities. Ability, Mosaic, Pride, and Women at the Dallas Symphony Orchestra celebrate Diversity Night on the 19th of April from 6 to 7 at the Meyerson Symphony Center. And this pre-concert event features performances, light snacks, and drinks. And the pre-concert event is free, but you must RSVP to attend. The Hyderabad Society of North Texas is inviting you to their Eid picnic on the 20th of April from noon till 6 at the Travick Pavilion in Grapevine. And for more information, you can call Muhammad Hamid at 469-544-4118. 469-544-4118. Pratham's annual gala is happening on Saturday, the 20th of April, and the entertainment is going to be by Vidya Vox, the YouTuber and singer, and the keynote speaker is Krish Dhanam, also a very well-known author. And so we are thrilled to invite you to the 2024 Pratham Dallas Fort Worth Gala, an extraordinary evening dedicated to empowering children and young people in India to transform their lives and communities. On the Saturday, the 20th of April at the Omni Frisco Hotel, and this year's gala theme is Changing Lives, Transforming Communities, and will highlight the remarkable impact of Pratham's work in expanding access to quality learning opportunities. Please do join us on the 20th of April for an unforgettable evening of exquisite dining, inspiring company, and a cause that truly matters. Healing the world through peace. Every individual can contribute to healing the world with thoughts of peace and love, and this is being organized by the Brahma Kumaris. These qualities are always within us, and when we realize them, we can naturally share them. World Meditation Hour on Sunday, the 21st of April from 6:30 to 7:30, where we focus on sending thoughts of peace and healing for the whole world. 360 shows, Diamond Productions, and 24/7 Entertainment are presenting Neetu Chandra as Umrao Jan Ada, a musical play in the Broadway style based on the novel written by Mirza Hadi Ruswa. On the 26th and 27th of April, there will be 3 shows, and the tickets are available at Ticketmaster. And for the first time in American television history, PBS stations across the U.S. will show a new documentary film on Swami Vivekananda called America's First Guru, and that too a first by an Indian origin documentary film maker. And it'll be in the month of May. Please mark that on your calendars. Also mark the Badshah's Pagal Tour at the Curtis Culwell Center on Friday, the 14th of June, and Shreya Ghoshal live on Sunday, the 16th of June, also at the Curtis Culwell Center. These are some of the events that are happening here in town, and as we have information of more of them, we will get them to you right here on Community Radio Networks. And that, ladies and gentlemen, should end our show for all the information that you need to take on the day today. For those of you who'd like to reach me directly, my number is 214-675-1754.